Hi everyone, it's Niamh here and welcome to my art journaling channel. Today we're going to be inspired by the amazing Megan Whisner Quinlan again and making some windows into our art journal. So I'm starting off in my Dina Wakley journal, and I'm starting off with some magenta paint, but using lots and lots of water. I want this really watery to get a really cool watercolor effect, which is, if you look at Megan's work, one of her signatures. She's amazing at making acrylic paints look like watercolors, and one of the reasons I love this is because I am not brilliant. I love doing layers. So I find water-soluble media frustrating because when I do additional layers over the top or glue something over the top, obviously the water reactivates the media underneath. So being able to create that sort of effect with something that's permanent when it's dried is really important to me. So this is what I'm using. I had magenta in the background, and then I added a little bit of fuchsia for the dark. Then I put some turquoise over the top with a little bit of ocean again for the darks. And I just used my finger to smudge it together. And this is deliberately really loose and, not thought out. The only thing that I'm making sure of is I'm using the same color combination on my 3 pages that I'm going to be working on. So again, making it really watery. I'm sponging off some of my extra that I don't particularly want in any particular areas. And I'm also making sure it's dry before I add on my next layer. And this is one of the sort of secrets to doing this as well. You can see I'm putting that turquoise over the top and it's layering. It's not mixing up with the pink because it's permanent when it's dry. So which is why I used my heat gun on it, just to make sure it was actually dry. Because the blue and the pink that I've got there would probably actually make quite a pretty purple instead of a brown, but depending on what colours you use together, you have to be a little bit careful with how things go. So going back into the middle page again, I thought I just needed a little bit more dark, so I've again put in some fuchsia and added the extra water. And I'm finding using the very thick brush, this I think it's like a 2-inch brush from Dina Wakley, is really handy for adding a lot of water at once. So this is a combination of 2 of Megan's amazing techniques, well kind of 3 because her watercolor backgrounds as well, but on her Instagram page, if you go and follow her on Instagram, she's got IGTV live video where she shows how she does her amazing doodles, and one of the things she did was like this with some black gesso and just created this a really funky amazing page, and it was just so simple but so effective and so graphic that I just absolutely adored it. You've got this really soft organic background and then these harsh black lines over the top sort of trapping them in there, but it kind of all works. It's just a really bizarre thing. So it's just lovely. I'm using black gesso. One of the reasons is it's really black. It also dries really quickly and it's got a beautiful matte finish. So yeah, I'm just using the width of the paintbrush, so it's not a fine paintbrush, it's about 1/2 inch I think, and you can see it's raggedy taggedy. I really don't mind that it doesn't have nice straight lines to it. It's all good. So all I'm doing now is just using my craft knife. I did draw out a bit of a abstracty shape to get my little window on here, and I've just put a really thin cutting board in between so I could make sure that I wasn't cutting into my next page. The other thing that I'm going to do, and it's something I do a lot with my cut lines or cut pages, is to actually go around the edge of the page with a black texture, and that just makes sure that you don't have that really harsh white line distracting you from what's going on. It sort of all blends together. Now what I'm doing is going in with my white gel pen. I'm using a white gel pen because I couldn't find my Posca paint pen. It had gone walkabout. So just really doodly lines on here. So now I'm going in with one of my favourite stamp sets, which is a Dina Wakley stamp set, and it's called Funky People. I just love it. I just love it. It's just amazing. So this is my secret to doing reversed images. So if you have ever wondered how to reverse an image and get it exactly the same, this is what you do. So my little secret trick to you, which probably a lot of you have already worked out anyway. So I've got a gel plate there. A gel plate is a soft gelatin plate that you usually put paint onto and make prints off it. But what it's really good at is you can actually also stamp on it, and because the ink doesn't absorb into the gel plate, it stays on the surface, you can get another fairly clear print. It's not going to be as clear as a rubber stamped image, the first generation, but it's going to be clear enough that you know exactly what's going on, you can match it up. So I've fussy cut out around my images. This is just a smaller gel plate that I'm using here, and I'm just pressing it onto the top, and you can see I've got my image on the other side, so it's exactly the same. I've got exactly the same detail onto my image on both sides, so it actually reverses the image for you, which is just such a handy trick to have, because you could have two of those large images facing each other on a page, or you know, if you really want something facing the other way, this is how you turn it round. So if you're a card maker or scrapbooker, you might find this a really handy thing to do, especially if you've got a gel plate sitting around in your area and you're not sure what to do with. If you didn't have a gel plate, you can kind of do it on an acrylic block, but it's just a little bit more tricky. The fact that you can actually press into a gel plate is a little bit softer, just gives you a little bit more give, and it means you can pick up the print a little more easily than you can on a really rigid surface. So before I add my funny peeps to my page, I'm just going in and writing a little bit of journaling about my family. Now, the reason I think I really bond or have, I really love these images are they remind me of my family. And my family is a really important part of me, as it is for most people. So it's really special to have a stamp set that's quite quirky like this, but it represents me and my family. So you can see by having the window here how useful it is having that stamped image on both sides, because I really don't need to worry about what I can see on the other side. When Megan did this in her demonstration, she used circle stamps, which weren't necessarily symmetrical, but you could kind of get away with stamping them on the back and you didn't really tell the difference. But with something particularly like these images that are so asymmetric, there's no way that I could sort of stamp over the top of this because it'd be pointing in different directions. So being able to reverse the image using the gel plate is a really handy little trick to have. You notice me on my phone there. One of the things that I tend to do is if I'm stuck for something to write, I tend to go to Pinterest and find a quote that kind of fits in with what I'm talking about. So that's what I was doing, looking up on Pinterest, and I found another quote to do with family and how important it is that I wanted to write on my page, just to kind of remind me, what I think about it. Then I'm going in with my black pen and doing some little extra doodles around my page. So these are just little bits of line work to, again, make it look a little bit more interesting, look a little bit more unique. Again, inspired heavily by how Megan does her doodling, which is to do the black lines first and then go over with the white, and it just changes how it looks on the page. I'm not being very careful with how I'm going over the lines. They are really scratchy. Some of them go over, some of them go under. It doesn't really matter. It's just adding some extra detail onto the page, and you'll be surprised by how good it looks, even if it's not perfect. Sometimes it not being perfect is really handy. So once I've got my window sorted, I wanted to do something about the back page. And I knew I wanted to have a reductive painting on the back using some abstract mark making. So I'm going back in with the same colours I've used in the background, but using it with pure paint. So it's much more opaque than the original watercolors. So I'm using both ends of my paintbrush. I'm using the tip to sort of make the dots. I'm using the end to sort of make those lines. I'm actually using the paint nib to make the little small dots. Then I'm obviously heat setting it. If you are doing the little small dots straight from the paint bottle, just be aware that they sometimes take a little while to dry. So once I was finished, I knew I wanted to put an abstract figure in here, kind of to tie in with the figures I had in the background already. And this is inspired by Dina Wakley. She talks about carrot people, which are sort of these just triangular carrot shaped looking figures. I'm going in with a darker colour, so I'm going in with night over the top of my background, and then I'm going to blend it in with some, I think, elephant, which is a lighter neutral grey, and blend it all in together. I have watered it down a little bit, so you can still see the mark making in the background. I'm also going in with another stencil and a wet wipe and wiping some away, so you can sort of see that little where it's been wiped away in the background. Gives it a little bit more texture. Now the reason this wasn't as dramatic as it usually is when you do this technique is because that paint was watered down, so it's a little bit more translucent, it's a little bit more watery, but by being watered down I can still see the marks in the background, but I've just got that element of depth from the darker colour to help block out some of it and make the figure be a focus. You can see I've also, you know, kept that same colour scheme going, so it all ties together, which is really important to me as well. So finally in the figure, I've gone in with another Dina Wakley stamp set, which says, hold on, be strong, be true to yourself, which kind of fitted in with the theme of this page really, which is all about family, not being alone, being a unit, looking after each other. And that sort of abstracty figure in the background, kind of apart from the family in the foreground, but you know, connected as well. So you can go all deep and meaningful with these things and make, you know, all these connections, or you can just do something for fun. It doesn't need to be deep and meaningful sometimes. I'm just stamping out the images onto some white card, and I'm going around the edges again to hide those sort of cut edges with my black ink pad to blend them in, and then sticking them onto my page. And I've got my window there so I can make sure that everything's kind of lined up so I can see the words and I pop through on the page. And this is the final outcome. So I really love how it tied together. I love my abstract page just as it was, but it means so much more having that window of people peeking through, and I was so excited to finally work out how to do my reversed images as well. So if you take anything away from this very long video, even if that's the one thing you take away, I hope it's a useful tip for you. In my description box below, you'll find all the links to Megan's socials. She has also just joined YouTube, which I'm so very excited about. It's about time. So you can check out some of her amazing artwork and her journals, which are just to die for as well. Until next time, bye for now.